And good morning, everybody. This is Sherman Ray, Black Success Magazine podcast. Thank you, folks, for being a part of the show today. It is about midweek, and we're got a great show on tap today. For those of you, this might be your first time joining us. Black Success Magazine comes to you weekdays, Monday through Friday, about 8:30 in the morning Pacific Standard Time. You can check us out on the web at blacksuccessmagazine.com. If you'd like to email me, just go ahead and email me at info@blacksuccessmagazine.com. Love to hear from you. And you can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Apple Podcast. For those of you who might want to know what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about, in our final block, we're going to be talking about how to cope with Zoom burnout. Yes, I know it's and this is one of those timely things that's happened. But in the news, early in the news today, folks, we want to talk a little bit about a happening that happened just yesterday. Tiger Woods, and this happened early in the morning, so we were already in production of the show yesterday. When this story came by, but Tiger Woods suffered an accident. We're going to show you a real quick picture of the. I think we'll be able to. I think I've got this. Yeah, I think I do. So Tiger Woods. Let's make sure I can bring this picture up. Yeah, I think I got it. So Tiger Woods was in a rollover in LA yesterday. He suffered some injuries where he actually had to go. This is a picture of his car, and so many of you probably were keeping up with this yesterday, where we saw Tiger Woods' car. This is pretty bad stuff. I mean, he suffered not any life-threatening injuries or anything like that, but he definitely was pretty beat up. He's in surgery where he had to have his legs worked on. And but when the police came to the car, though, they said, "Hey, Tiger, are you all right?" He was lucid. He could talk. So there wasn't any brain injury. They didn't even take him to the closest hospital. They took him to a trauma unit where he could be able to get the needed services and attention that he needed. So that's a good sign. All accounts were that Tiger Woods was doing fairly well with where he was at, so that's good. So we'll definitely pray for Tiger Woods on that account. That's and it gets scary. That gets really scary when somebody's going through things like that. There was a story about a woman by the name of Pinky Cole, and so Pinky Cole. This is a great story. I love to hear about people who are doing some wonderful things. So for those of you who don't know who Pinky Cole is the owner of a vegan, what do you call it? A vegan restaurant or a vegan brand. And she was named Forbes Woman of the Next 1000 list. And how she got on this list was very cool. She did it not so much as much money she earned, but for her philanthropic work. And so that's awesome. So she was able to give money out. She has a vegan. So her name for her brand is called the Slutty Vegan. Okay, the Slutty Vegan. So that's her brand. That's kind of funny. The initiative that Forbes has highlights this small-scale super achievers defying the odds. It also showcases self-funded shops and pre-revenue startups with under $10 million in revenues or funding. But Cole made the list due to her philanthropic work conducted through her organization, the Pinky Cole Foundation. That's really cool. So she's done some great things in the Atlanta area, which is great. So we're very excited for her. That's Pinky Cole. So she's done some great things also. And I'm going to take a real quick break here, folks, because what happened yesterday, I want to let you know something happened yesterday with us I was able to speak at called the Black History Moment, something like that. I forgot even what they called it. U.S. Bank asked a group of us panelists to come on and talk about who we are, what we do, that kind of thing. So in the Las Vegas area where I live, many of you know we're broadcasting the show from Las Vegas. We have a small community of Black business owners, and so we get highlighted due to what we do in the community, which feel so very privileged and very honored to be lumped in with these folks. On the panel were um, Kanisha, I forgot your last name. I'm going to get killed because of this. But Kanisha is one of the people who, her family has been in Las Vegas for a long time. I mean, just a long time. As a matter of fact, they have so I was on the group with her, Carlos Hanks, who is the captain for Metro here in Las Vegas, the Metropolitan Police Department. So very excited. We spoke in front of about 50, 100 business owners and U.S. Bank staff. So I'm very excited, very thankful that I was asked to be a part of that. So thank you very much for U.S. Bank, for those people asking us to be a part of that. There was another story, Linda Thomas Greenfield, who was named to be the UN ambassador. So the ambassador to the UN. So very excited about that. She was voted in during this Biden administration by a vote of 78-20. Very excited. She only becomes like the second Black woman to become a UN ambassador. So very excited about that. It's a great opportunity for her to be a part of it. Let's move on to another story. This was actually kind of a fun story. There's a man, many of you watch The Simpsons. And The Simpsons is, it's fun. It's adult comedy, that kind of thing. Well, there's a man by the name of Kevin Michael Richardson. And Kevin Michael Richardson is a voice actor. So he does a lot of voice acting. And for over, how many years has it been? Let's see. I'm going to find this story because this is actually a pretty good story too. Over the last number of years for the launch of these adult comedies like The Simpsons and that kind of stuff, the voice of Dr. Hibbard has been done by a white guy. And so Dr. Hibbard, Chuckle, we all know from The Simpsons, will finally be made by a Black man's voice now. So all these years, the voice that you've heard of the guy on the left has been done by a white guy. And so now the man on the right, his name is Kevin Michael Richardson. Kevin Michael Richardson does what's the name of the show? He actually does another show that it's actually really very cute. And since I don't watch these adult comedies, I don't really remember the name of the show, and I was looking it up and I forgot it. But anyways, he will now be taking over February 28th, which is just a couple of days. He will be taking over the voice of Dr. Dr. Hibbard, excuse me, which will be great. This guy, it's just funny. This is just fun stuff. Very excited for him that he's actually going to be taking over, and that should be a great, great opportunity for him too. So, we look at small gains, and we think that we'll never make it. Things won't change, but things are changing. It's very cool. And in this particular case, Kevin Michael Richardson is doing a great job. We're very excited for him for being a part of the show. And the last thing we're going to be talking about today in our first segment today is we're going to be talking about what's going on in North Carolina. In North Carolina, many of you business owners who are watching the show know about the PPP loans. You know about some of the things that we're trying to gain, some of the things that that we really need to see momentum shift done. Well, one of the things that happened during the first round of PPP loans is that Black business owners did not and were not a major part of that. This second round, the monies that were designated were actually, a lot of them were designated right for CDFIs or community development financial institutions. And those monies went directly to Black-owned banks or minority banks or for smaller banks. So this is great. So small banks are funding these Black businesses in larger numbers right now. We're very excited about that because we need it. And especially, we were talking about this with some of the folks from U.S. Bank and SBA as I get to talk to some of those folks on a regular basis, and how we can actually get the money into the hands of Black business owners. And so we're very excited about that. So, in the second segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about Valentine's Day and how you can actually be a better husband, better, I don't know, better spouse, and maybe make things a little more romantic. So, we'll talk about that when we come back for Black Success Magazine podcast. So, let's not waste any time, folks. During in a couple of weeks, or actually in just in a couple of days, Valentine's Day is coming. It's right around the corner, and you need to get ready for it. Let's talk about ways that you can actually get your stuff together and make just romance just one of those exciting things. As a matter of fact, let's start by talking about a romantic couple that I love this couple. I follow if you follow us on Instagram or you follow us on Facebook or Twitter. I'm sorry, and we're on live TV, of course, now. You know that there are some great things that are going on. This couple, and Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, are the love couple that there is. And really, I want to highlight them a little bit because they really fit in really well with this particular segment that we're talking about. And we're talking about love and how you can actually just shower your spouse with love. Especially Valentine's Day is coming up. So don't wait on this. I'm telling you right now, do not wait to begin to plan for Valentine's Day because you're going to really regret it. And the best way, the best way you can show the love to your spouse is by beginning right now planning for Valentine's Day. And you don't have to make this just for Valentine's Day. You really don't. You can do this 24/7, 365 days out of the year. I bring up Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade because literally I see them on Instagram all the time. Not just every once in a while, every day. Every single day they're on Instagram doing something, just having fun together. We tend to forget that there are a lot of Black couples who have been married, or couples, even mixed marriage couples, who've been married many, many years. Snoop Dogg has been married to his wife. I think it's been 23 years now. He's been married to his wife. A lot of couples. One of my favorites is Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington and his wife been married like over 30 years. My wife and I just celebrated 30 years of marriage together, February 2nd, Groundhog Day. Many, many couples who are A-lister couples, you wouldn't even think that they've been married that long, have been married many, many years. LL Cool J, just to name a few. Well, let's talk a little bit about Valentine's Day and how you can make that marriage, that relationship, and that particular day all that much better. And we'll keep Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade up here because we just love Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union. Number one, plan. You need to begin to start planning right now for whatever you're going to be doing. Let's talk about Valentine's Day specifically, but you need to begin to plan right now. Are you going to, how many days do you have left to get whatever you're going to get done? Begin to put together a plan, okay? I've only got 10 days or I've got 5 days. Begin to say, okay, in this amount of time, I've got to get this much done. I've got to work on this particular part of the project, or maybe it's a weekend away. My wife and I have spent so many weekends and they're little mini vacations in a place called Boulder City, Nevada. So Boulder City, Nevada is just outside of Las Vegas. It's our getaway. It's close enough to Las Vegas where we feel like, we can, that we're out of Vegas, but that we're not so close to Vegas that we feel like we've never left. So you might want to just take off for a weekend, which is cool. But begin to plan what you're going to do before you get there. I think one of the things that could actually help you out is the element of surprise, okay? Many times especially on days like we have right now where we're talking about just Valentine's Day. We know Valentine's Day is coming up. It's a day but let's say it's not even a day that anybody even knows about. Maybe it's maybe it's just a surprise that you're going to just surprise your spouse with something. That's a great thing to do. Wouldn't it be great to just be surprised? All of a sudden you come home and then all of a sudden, your spouse is dressed up in that favorite suit. Okay, that's just those kinds of things just heighten romance and it gets things going. My kids were out of the house for the last 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, mom and I got to just lavish each other with just fun. We got to be together. It was a great time for us just to be together. Nobody in the house. And we took full advantage of that time. And I think I'll just leave it at that. That we just took advantage of that time because you don't always get those opportunities. So use them when you have a chance to use them. I think it's a great idea. And number 3 on our list, execute. Executing your plan, whatever it is. Now we're talking, let's go back to Valentine's Day. Execution is key. Because you've got time to think about this. You've got time to think about whatever you're going to do. Your execution needs to be flawless. And we're not saying putting pressure on yourself to do things that you can't do, but even if it's a small thing, even if you're just making a card, your spouse doesn't care. Your loved one doesn't care. Your significant other doesn't care as long as you put in the effort to do it. They love the fact that you thought of them. And that's important. You've got to begin to start thinking right now, what am I going to do for the person I love? And when you do that, it just creates that thing that keeps you together 30 years. And like I said, after 30 years, my wife and I, we know each other pretty well. We've known each other for, we got married in 91. But to keep the flame going, that's what it's all about. It's really about keeping the flame going in your relationship. Begin to think about Valentine's Day now, okay? Because you want this day to go off and you want it to be just this wonderful thing that is going to help continue to grow your romance. As we go into 2022, 23, 24, we want our romances, we want our relationships to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And I'll tell you right now, your kids, not only is it great for you, but your kids are going to say, my mom and dad were married for decades. As opposed to, man, I came from a broken home. Break the cycle, okay? And continue just to fuel that flame of romance in your relationship. You can do it. This is not a tough thing to do. It doesn't, you don't have to jump through hoops to make things happen. It could be a small thing. It could be you making a card, but start right now to plan what you're going to do. Okay. Number 2, make sure it's a surprise. Don't make it so that I know what they're going to do. I know what they're going to do. Don't do that. Be a surprise. Be that guy or be that gal that your spouse brags about you and they go, you're not going to guess that when your friends see you guys together, they go, oh, you are that couple. Be that couple that everybody knows that you're keeping the flames going, that you're always loving each other. You're always doing things for each other. Try to outdo each other. And the last thing, remember when we were talking about this before, execute whatever you're going to do. Get good at it. This pays off dividends like you won't believe. You can always tell happy couples that do things for each other, that selflessly do things for each other, and they lavish love on each other because they're always just smiling at each other. They're always holding hands. They're always together. You don't see a lot of pictures of them on Facebook by themselves. You see a lot of pictures of them together because that's really what it's all about. It's about building that love and it's building that relationship together. Okay. All right. In our last segment, folks, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're starting. We're going to talk about how to cope with Zoom burnout. We're going to give you 4 tips on how to cope on that. On Black Success Magazine, the podcast, I'm your host, Sherman Ray. We'll be back in just a second. And we are back, folks. This is Black Success Magazine, the podcast. I'm your host, Sherman Ray. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about how to cope with Zoom burnout. And I'll tell you, this is probably going to be one of those conversations that is very timely, because over the last year now, Zoom has become something that went from being a novelty in most of our lives to becoming something that is it's not going away. It's just not going away. There's no way it's going away. And many of us probably didn't even know what Zoom was or video conferencing was before this. And if we did, it was something we did, every once in a blue moon. But now, since the pandemic, Zoom, Google Meets, WebEx, those type platforms have become an integral part to our lives. Since we can't see each other, video conferencing or video communication has become a useful tool, but within that comes a level of burnout that has become, they're probably going to be psychologists. There are going to be new levels of psychology that are going to probably be created because of people having to do Zoom calls and having to work in this medium. But folks, get used to it, because Zoom meetings, these kind of platforms are not going away. As a matter of fact, they're going to probably grow. I spoke to one of my friends over at the bank that we work with, and they are not talking about creating more branches or opening more branches. They're talking about actually not opening more branches and going to virtual platforms to do all of their stuff, especially their meetings and doing things that they would normally traditionally do face-to-face. They're going to be doing that. The problem with this is that with this separation of people, and most people are very tribal. Excuse me. Most people are very communal. So we like to be with each other. We like to touch each other. We like to, we like to sit down, have a cup of coffee together. We love that. But with the pandemic, and even after the pandemic has been solved, and everybody has been vaccinated, and we eradicate COVID, you're still going to have the genie's out of the bottle. Okay, once the genie's out of the bottle, it's not going back. So we're not going back to the place where we were before. And that kind of makes you think, boy, there's a great investment opportunity there too, because this is the way things are going to be from now on, or at some level. They said 40% of Americans are now doing virtual interactions. 40%. That's nearly half of America is on online of some kind, which is that's a huge number. And if you couldn't plan for things like that. So how do we deal with the level of anxiety and literally the burnout that's associated with being on this kind of medium? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to give you 4 tips on how to really cope with this. Number 1, less is more. What do we mean by less is more? Well, just because, oops, all right. Sorry, I'm dealing with cameras all the time. When we talk about less is more, just because you do Zoom meetings and you might do 3 or 4 a day, it doesn't mean that every communication that you have has to be on camera. Remember this old thing, guys. I'm going to bring this up, and this might be a shock to you guys. Remember this thing right here? It's called a cell phone. It's called a phone. And before we had this medium, Zoom calls, where you actually can see me, we used to use telephones. We did. And we can go back to that. So if you do this all the time, where you're always on a Zoom call, or you're on a video conference, or you're doing a broadcast like this, you can break that up by picking up the phone and just voice speak. You can just speak to people on the phone. I know. And it's been a year, but we can still pick up the phone and say, hey, what's up, brother? Or even, and I know this is what I do, I put it on speakerphone all the time. I rarely put my phone up to my my ear anymore. I actually just put it on speaker and I speak to people that way. And it just kind, and then I kind of kick back, and I just kind of kick back and just kind of speak to people that way. So one, less is more, and you can actually be able to uh, alleviate some of the stress that you are going through by just lessening the amount of time that you're doing these kind of calls, because you don't have to do it with every medium that you do. Number two, create a dedicated spot for your Zoom calls. The hardest thing about Zoom calls is that, and if you're like a lot of people who have not done this a lot, is that you find yourself setting up and tearing down, setting up and tearing down a place for you to do your call. So you're frantic by the time you get to the call itself, or to the webinar, or to the conference, or whatever you're going to be doing. And it's got to look just perfect. It's got to look perfect every time. So you're always readjusting. How about creating a dedicated space that you don't change? You just don't change it. That's just the way it is. In my office, and I do a lot of my Zoom calls in my office, I have a space that I do my Zoom calls from, which is right here, where you see me at right now. I have all the lighting I need. I've got lighting here. I've got lighting here, and I would swing around the camera, but I'm not going to swing it around. But I have all the lighting I need in this area. I've got the drapes. I've got the desk. I've got the computer. I've got the microphones, and I don't have to change this. I can get up from this space. Other than opening up and giving my more lighting, I know exactly what this space is going to look like. That way, when I get on the Zoom call, I don't have to, or when I know I'm going to have a Zoom call, I don't have to change the lighting or change it. It's all set. It's just the way it is. And that alleviates some of the stress that you have to go through when you're doing calls like this. So that needs to be a part of what you're set up. Set up a place that's going to be. Number three, know your responsibilities as host. Know what you're supposed to be doing. If you're the host of a Zoom call, or your whatever interaction you're going to have, you need to know that that is your responsibility. Know that you are the one who's in control of the thing, and that people have their responsibilities in the call too. That's going to help you, because now you know exactly what you're going to be doing, as opposed to coming into a call and not knowing what you're supposed to be doing. That is probably one of the most frustrating things that you can do, is just saying, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And lastly, stop staring at yourself. This is funny. So in Zoom calls, normally what happens, you actually have it could be on your computer, it could be a remote camera. Know what you're supposed to be doing before you get to the call, so that you don't stare at yourself incessantly during the call. On occasion, you'll probably see me looking around for things that I'm doing. It's because we need to focus on the person who we're communicating with, as opposed to staring at ourselves as we're speaking. So that helps you out. It's kind of like jazz music. Jazz music is really created by somebody knowing what they're going to play first, and then they just play around that melody. Zoom calls are the same thing. Know what you want to do. Know what you want to talk about. And that way you don't have to focus on staring at yourself the whole time. You can focus on the communication that happens as a result of the projects that you're going to be talking about. Okay. So that will help you out, and that will alleviate a little bit. I hope that helps you to alleviate some kind of the burnout that are associated with Zoom calls. Anyway, this has been Sherman Wright, Black Success Magazine, the podcast. I really hope you've enjoyed the show today. We'll be back again tomorrow, 8:30 in the morning, for Black Success Magazine, the podcast, or we call it BSM podcast. If you'd like to check us out, we're online at blacksuccessmagazine.com. You can always find me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, or Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to send me an email, send it to info@blacksuccessmagazine.com, especially for online or open mic Fridays and I'll read your question online. So anyways, folks, we'll be back again tomorrow for Black Success Magazine, the podcast. It's been Sherman Wright. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.